Hey, what's up, everyone? You're currently tuned into TBD on KCSB FM 91.9 in Santa Barbara and netnetradio.com, Tijuana. Today, Lietoc and I are joined by Los Angeles-based musician, visual artist, analog, digital synthesis guru, and liner note friend Brian James Zhao Griffith. Brian might be a new name to the TBD podcast, but fear not. From audio and visual collaborations with Brin to release on Moon Glyph as part of the Electric Sound Bath duo, and even recent live in studio with our friend Chuck Soo-Hoo and their band Underwater Garden Ensemble. How you doing, Brian?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. Thank you.
Awesome. So how was the month of July for you?
The month of July has been pretty good. I would say warmer than usual, but that's seems to be the case for everyone in the US. But yeah, it's been good. It's been hot. It's been productive, fairly busy.
Yeah.
But yeah, not bad.
While you haven't had any solo releases, you've been tapping into, like, I guess, collaborations from the 2020 Electric Sound Bath release to Squash and Biscuit and the Underwater Garden Ensemble. Did the pandemic impact a shift towards collaborative music, or have you still kept up with like solo recordings recently as well?
For myself, like my solo releases came out of initial collaborations. Like I never really, we're talking like maybe like 10 years or so ago when I first like dipped into this particular form of expression via music. It wasn't it was never really like a solo practice, or in a way it was, but it was more just like truly practice, like, in the shed working on the instrument. But I would say that it kind of matured when I started to collaborate with other people. In particular, when I was living in Chicago, I met another musician, Natalie Shammy, who goes by Tall Sounds.
Oh yeah.
And so we started, just like playing together, and then, sometimes we would invite another person or two in, but that's kind of how my world of, more experimental, more ambient, more improvised music kind of developed. And so from there, I started to do more solo stuff, just again, still out of the desire for practicing. Previously it was more focused on an instrument. Like my main instrument is the bass guitar, and so
yeah,
I would you practice, but then moving into this form of music, or any type of music, but this was newer to me, so I felt like I also had to do my own personal practice to jam, I guess appropriately, or like adequately, or like just extend the toolbox. And so so that's kind of like how solo stuff kind of evolved, just from playing for myself, and then starting to record that, and then listening back, and then just getting deeper and deeper into audio, manipulation, recording, etc.
So I guess, like, before we jump like more into like some of this stuff, I guess, like, outside of making music as well, what is your main line of work? Like, what do you like? What do you do for fun as well? Like, what are you up to outside of music?
Outside of music, I've really tried to set up a lot of what I do kind of around music, or like the act of creation that is like tied to doing stuff. I do also I do some like video work. It's been it's been a little while since I've focused solely on that, just for various reasons. But I did actually do a video a couple months back for my friend John, who records under Arctica. He did a release.
Oh, sick.
But I do also I do some video work which, you know, I got into through one of my previous roommates, Sarah Zucker, who she's also like a really great photographer, video artist, internet artist as well. And so we did a lot of collaborations. Yeah, that kind of led me down the rabbit hole of, you know, more like video synth based video art, not hardware stuff, because it's pretty rare to find, and then also a little expensive to piece together. But you can get really interesting textures through that, and even just like very simple film or even like digital manipulation. So yeah, I've done a lot of video stuff, a little bit of like animated GIF things.
That's awesome.
But then outside of like any sort of art, I really fancy myself a pretty decent chef, I would say.
Hell yeah, dude. That's sick.
Yeah. So that's something that both Shul and my partner and I like really like to do, to kind of disconnect from like screens or anything. It's just like, okay, well, let's just cook. Because in a lot of ways, that's also like making music.
Yeah.
I mean, if you cook like myself without a recipe, oftentimes, then it's very much like music.
Well, time out here. So you're kind of an improvisational cook. You're building what you've got each night out of the basket of ingredients in your pantry. Like it's an episode of Chopped here.
Sure. A much lower stakes episode of Chopped where I know kind of exactly what I have, but yes, we can sure, let's say that.
No. I totally get you on that realm. I mean, a lot of random leftovers, if I ever have stuff and I'm alone, they'll end up going in like an instant ramen bowl, or they'll end up going in a miso soup. That's where like kind of my bear kind of core dish comes from there. So
hell yeah. I actually had this noise guy on my show, or on the show last week. He came into the studio. His name is Scott, and he has a project called Slurred Oath. He's just a big like noise guy, you know what I mean? And he's been hosting like punk shows and like all this stuff like since like the 90s. Like this guy's been in it forever. And then I guess like one day, or like at some point in his life, he decided to make like a huge shift from just being a punk guy, I guess. I mean, he still is kind of, and like I don't know, but he decided to go to culinary school and become an actual chef. So like that was like his like profession for a long time. And like he like traveled the country, like working in like all these like, you know, fancy restaurants and stuff as like an actual chef, which is like insane. And I guess the point I'm making here is I asked him like, you know, how he transitioned from being like a hardcore kid to a chef. And he was like, I kind of just felt like it was just another extension of like what I was doing in punk. And I was just putting my passion into like cooking food for people. And he was like, you can still like, you know, I guess put your ethics into like cooking and stuff. Like he was like vegan and like straight edge. And he's like, I just felt like my cooking was like another extension of like those beliefs and whatnot. And I was like, wow, this is like kind of crazy. Would have never thought that like, you know, I guess being a chef could be an extension of being a hardcore kid. You know what I mean? Or being,
I think that makes sense.
An extension of music.
And also too, like with music and food, I think both, if you are a chef or a musician, like you have a pretty weighty responsibility on your hands to treat the audience with care.
That's true, actually.
Patron with care.
Yeah,
because
for sure.
I mean, if you're not delicate with your sound, you could, you know, deafen someone, cause hearing loss. And if you're not delicate or, you know, proper with your food handling, you could like poison someone.
That's true.
So the stakes are high for both, which is kind of interesting.
What's been the best dish that you've made, I guess, in your opinion, recently? Or is there anything that you like find yourself like coming back to? You're like, damn, that was good, and like make it like a couple times a month or something?
You know, we tend to do a lot of stir fries because it's like just really easy.
They're so good.
It's very good. Like we don't usually cook with meat in the house for ease of cleanup and health and whatnot.
Yeah.
And so the easiest way to, make a vegetable like bloom is through a stir fry, because you can put as much or as little sauce as you want. I usually like a good sauce, and so we have a wide variety of emulsifiers and different
I got a couple of questions.
Ingredients. Sure.
I got a couple of questions. So first off,
okay,
especially if you're doing a stir fry and you're not really using a meat, it's possible then, are you adding in a tofu here? And what is the strategy for pressing it out that you find if you are using a tofu?
There is a tofu that often gets added, and there's a couple different ways I like to treat the tofu. Usually it is actually crucial for those of you who have cooked with tofu.
For sure.
Sometimes you can get like a pretty firm tofu that doesn't really require pressing, which is nice for quickness. Depending on the consistency that I want, like we'll usually have a firm and just kind of like a medium tofu just kind of ready to go. I won't really press the medium because already I know I want it to be kind of more of like a scrambled egg type of texture. So the integrity isn't really there.
Yeah.
If it's like a firm tofu, then, I'll just put plates on it for, 10 minutes or 20 minutes if I have the time. What I also like doing is to do, if I have more time, you do a press, you then freeze it, you thaw it, you then press it again, and then you get a really convincing, like almost chicken breast flavor, like if you just peel it with your hands.
Really?
Then you can marinate it, because it has it's like it's been so pressed, and then it has like a different texture to it, so all of like the juices can kind of go inside of the different pores. So if you have a little bit more time, it's a good trick. It does take like 2 days to prepare.
Dude, that's sick. I'm gonna have to try that.
This does bring me to the second question, because you bring up a marinade. We brought up emulsions. The sauces here, Chef Brian. What are we working with?
Well, that does go back to what I usually like to cook, and even though I don't really work with recipes, like I watch food videos to be inspired. And there's one recipe I found that was for really quick Korean style noodles, or Korean style stir fry. You can add, it can be like a stir fried noodle or not. I've done it, with that. With the ingredients weren't really what I was after. It was really the sauce. And so it's a if you're cooking with Korean food, a lot of time you use like a gochujang paste, but this one uses gochugaru, which is the chili flakes.
Ooh.
And so the sauce, if you have it on hand, it's like a mixture of the chili flakes with a little bit of Shaoxing wine, Chinese cooking wine, a little bit of oyster sauce. I use vegan oyster sauce, or it's like a mushroom sauce, they call it.
Yeah.
Then any type of soy sauce you can mix in there, a little bit of sugar if you want. I use like kind of like a thicker, darker soy sauce that already has a little bit of sweetness in it. And then I'll throw in just like a little bit of vinegar, whatever I have. And so you mix that all around. And then when you throw that in, and some sesame oil too for that special pop. But then because it has like so much oil and liquid in it, you put into the hot pan, and it almost makes like an instant chili oil. Because if you're one method of making your own chili oil is to use the gochugaru or another type of chili flake, and then you pour scalding oil on it, and that creates the chili oil. So in a way, this sauce makes like a kind of miniaturized version of that, and it turns into like this really delicious, really spicy, very rich sauce that's really good on anything.
Dude, Brian, that sounds so good.
Oh, thank you. I've done it several times, clearly.
Wow, man. Yeah, that sounds really good. Are you on Food Talk at all? Are you on TikTok?
I am not. I have tried to dip into TikTok a few times, but it just has not really grasped me too much. I'm more on the food tube, the YouTube.
Oh,
Not
sick.
PBS or a classic Food Network, because I live with my folks, and so I get exposed to a lot of classic PBS food programs, and the next thing I know, I'm at the library getting an edition of America's Test Kitchen or Milk Street. They're great programs. America's Test Kitchen, huge shout out.
Milk Street's kind of sick.
Those are my recs, but I never went to food tube.
I will check them out. I mean, there's a ton of very good YouTube recipes that are out there.
What's your go-to channel if you're just like looking for something?
Let me double check which one that would be.
Yeah, no worries. I was just thinking like, dude, you would be good on like, I don't know, if you had like a food TikTok or something like that and you like posted some of your recipes, like you could honestly make it like ASMR, dude. Like, you know how to do like audio stuff, like you make like sick music. I feel like this could be a lucrative thing for you if you went into like food talk and like, because they're like kind of ASMR, you know what I mean? Like the big ones where they're like cutting all the food and doing all that stuff, you know?
Yes, I mean I love listening to those. They're very good. Where are my hold on, I can never find like the playlists just instantly on my app, because I just like kind of stumble across these,
yeah,
and then they show up. But there's one that actually is very ASMR called Choose Vegan, CHUS.
Sick.
Vegan.
Yeah,
and it's there. I don't think there's any talking. It's just food sounds and then words.
Wow,
that is kind of dope.
Yeah,
that's finessed.
It is. It's very good. But I can.
Do you ever like you read like any of like the big like vegan cookbooks? Like my girlfriend was a vegetarian for a while, and there was a couple. Oh man, I can't remember the main one, but there was like She Glows was like one of like the cookbooks that like, and like blogs we would read to find like cool recipes that were vegan.
Yeah, so my sister originally was vegan and vegetarian growing up, and she's kind of like what tipped me on that.
Oh, really?
Like years ago. And so like I got my touchstone for vegetarian and or vegan cooking was through the Veganomicon, which just has a lot of really just kind of like basic tips, basic recipes for like, you can make like a chickpea loaf. It'll teach you how to do that. It'll explain what like TVP is or what nutritional yeast is.
Oh, yeah.
Like here's how to like, cook a bunch of different vegetables, just like a good manual for that.
Oh, that's sick. What was this called? You said again?
The Veganomicon.
The Veganomicon. Sick.
Yeah, that's a fun name.
Yeah,
it is. It is a fun name. Yes, I very much like it.
I'd say most of my vegan alternative and stuff exposure came from college and stuff, and just like my girlfriend and everything. And yeah, dude, I wish that, honestly, I feel like I could see myself like going vegetarian or vegan at some point, but we'll see.
It's it's not bad. I think it's I find it a little easier just to enter in terms of food prep. I also think sometimes meat can just like overtake a dish too much. Like you can, of course, treat meat in a variety of different ways, different marinades, spices, whatever, and it can really be the star. But I think it's not like one note, but it has a very strong chord, let's say. And it's just kind of that when, if you like cook with vegetables, like the emphasis is really like, are you going to have a lot of spice forward stuff? Is it going to be more like, are you going to let the vegetable kind of breathe? How are you going to prepare the vegetables? Are they going to be cooked? Are they going to be raw? Is it going to be a combination of them? So I think it's just like a little more fun to experiment with vegetarian cooking.
Yeah, for sure.
There's some really great pairings that just come out of knowing what vegetables should go well. The big one for me, it's fennel. And then you have scallions and Oh goodness. It's those two and then just regular onion. Those together. Or green beans and green beans. All three go incredibly well together.
I had a big bok choy cake not too long ago.
Bok choy is an incredibly versatile leafy green. It is definitely one of my favorites. It's perfect in a stir fry. It's perfect in a soup, primarily because you don't really have to cook it that long. Like it's really good with just like a quick blanching if you want it to be like really crunchy and still have a little bit of its original flavor. But bok choy is great. It's a very versatile vegetable.
Bok choy is so good, dude. Yeah, for a while I was just like buying like a bag of bok choy a week and just like cooking it every day. Or just like baby bok choy or whatever, you know what I mean? It's so good. I was making like baby bok choy and I was like stir frying it with like tofu and stuff. Oh man, it was amazing. Make me want to make that again. But
well, we'll do it. Why not?
That's true, dude. I'm gonna have to. I think tonight I'm actually gonna make some Japanese curry just from like a block of like curry or whatever, stir fry some veggies and then throw that into the curry. And then we actually have a block of tofu right now. Maybe I'll throw that in. That sounds kind of good, actually.
Dang.
Yeah, why not? The Japanese curry blocks are really just fantastic.
Dude, they're so good. Oh my God. And it's like the best too. Like
very good.
We went to, or there's like this, I forget, there's like this market, I think it's called Tokyo Central out where my girlfriend lives in like the South Bay. I'm sure there's a lot. I think it's a chain. But anyways,
yes, I know exactly which one you're talking about. Is it the one that has 2 floors?
Yes, dude, it's crazy. It's insane.
It is.
That place was
very
insane.
Good. We have made the trip specifically down there because they have probably the best tofu and some of the best produce.
Yeah.
Well, no, that was it. They have really good produce.
Oh yeah, perfect.
Dude, yeah, that place was crazy, and I specifically went there because I really like the S&B like golden curry. Like that's the one that I usually go to, like the S&B brand, and they have the extra hot at Tokyo Central, and like I guess like all the other stores that I would go to only had the hot. And so I got the extra hot and it was so good. Met its expectations.
Extra hot is the way to go.
Yeah, it's so good. One of my go-to meals, I guess, if I just need to make something quick is I'll like cook up a block of curry and then I'll just make a curry omelet. You know what I mean? So good.
Oh, that sounds very good, actually.
Yeah, like some rice, put the omelet on top. And then, there's like this market in Oxnard that I went to that they make their own like chili oil and it's like super dense and like there's so much chili in there. It's like super thick. And I'll just like put a little bit of that on the pan and cook the egg in like the chili oil. Oh, dude, it's so good.
That's really all you need.
Yeah, definitely. For sure. Anyways, maybe we should move back to music.
No, that's good though. We needed to have a conversation with Chef Brian. Now we need to have a conversation with musician Brian. And we kind of tiptoed over this a bit, but let's get properly into walking people through the Brian kind of catalog here. Let's go back to your DIY origins, specifically any sounds, places, pieces of equipment, or early scene memories that kind of tangibly maybe set up a direction of where you were going to go. What got you at least to that first Grey Ghost release there on Hasu Mountain?
Oh. Well, like my first, I guess that what kind of led me in that direction would have been living in Chicago. Like that's kind of what sent me off, spurred me into into that sound, because I'm originally from Florida. I went to college there and then moved to Chicago afterwards for a couple of years, just to leave.
Yeah.
And as Floridians often do. Yeah, I mean, early, like for me, it was really important, to backtrack a bit. Like I had kind of throughout college, I had a strange bumpy touch and go relationship with music for myself, as oftentimes like happens, like as you're trying to situate yourself in the world. And so towards the end of my undergrad, like I, kind of rededicated my efforts towards music. And then specifically, I really wanted to, explore the bass. Like that's, that has been my instrument since I was like 10. I was like, okay, well, let's open this up and see what's happening. So while in Chicago, like I really used collaborations and like this type of music as a way to break out of what you would normally associate the bass guitar with, which is, I mean, I guess like not much other than like the backbone of any sort of band or music that requires like live instruments. So I wanted to like make it be a very like nebulous, weird sounding thing. But in terms of like, I really like to try to not use gear too much as like a crutch, but there are certain pieces, I guess broadly speaking, that do really help form you. And like, especially for me, like as I was dipping into effects or pedals and in my case, like a lot of like looping, the classic green, like line 6 DL4 is at the end of many players' signal chains for a reason, because it, especially at that time, it was like the thing that would do what you wanted it to do. And in my case, I wanted to record, then instantly go into like overdub. And that is not the case with all loopers. I digress. So like a looper is like really important for my sound. And then also this company called Zvex makes a pedal called Instant Lo-Fi Junkie, and that really drew me into like kind of like a warbly, degraded type of sound. Because that is like when I first started exploring my own stuff, with the bass, it kind of also came from a bit of like a turntablism background. Like I was just for fun, like that was something I was really into. And so I really liked the sound of like physical sound grabbing, like the sound of a vinyl. Just the sound of vinyl or any mechanical thing that isn't supposed to be there.
Had you kind of theorized, or early on, were you considering working with turntables and kind of running it through a pedal, or just doing something of any nature kind of like that with DJing? It's just to hear somebody bring up turntablism. It doesn't happen terribly often.
Sure. Yeah, that was something that I had definitely thought about. There's this one ancient video that I just like can't find. There's like a Reddit group of people trying to, well, it doesn't really matter, but there's this old video of this producer 6'2" and another one called P Love that did like this live turntablism, like ambient beat performance.
Oh, sick.
That I saw, like, this is like 12, 13 years ago at this point. And that really kind of like struck a note with me. I was like, oh, this is really weird. This is really interesting. Like it's because it's not, it's using like turntables in a way that you wouldn't necessarily, like, it was much more as like a way to add texture and build a tapestry. So I did think about using like turntables in that way, but like the reality of doing that and how I could like see it working would require too many turntables, and it's just like too expensive, and turntables are very heavy, like they are not light things to move around, and so that's like an idea that I never really fully explored. However, I did to kind of like jump forward in time. Like one of my actually, I guess it was my latest like solo release called Flaps for Jackie. Like a lot of the textures and sounds from that are actually taken from some of my like sample records that I have of random stuff. So it's like an element that I still really like. Like I'm, sampling is something that really, that's really interesting to me. Like I really like taking sound and manipulating it.
What have you been like most drawn to, like sampling and stuff?
Percussive sounds, I would say. I really like. I also really like vocal sounds. I'll say like voice, choir.
Sick. So are you
usually not like tonal stuff. Like I like the more like percussive or like kind of textural things.
Oh, you're going for the breaks, or you are going for the voice there. I can see there's two different. I mean, they definitely intermingle, but they also kind of separate in their own ways there. Some of the voice stuff, because I think of some voice sampling, and it's like, Noah Kreshvesky's work that Orange Milk has put out, or some of the Carl Stone stuff, or just even into kind of Wonder Tricks Point Never there. But then you think of a drummer percussive, and I've got in my car right now a Grandmaster Flash Greatest Hits CD, and the one actual Grandmaster Flash cut on there is his quick mix theory, and it's all of the major. It's the Good Time Break. It's and another one, Bites the Dust. It's it's Rapture, the rap there, and all of those pieces, trying to make a seamless BPM out of all of them that can hold the party going. And you only get a 7-minute snippet here because he's doing it live, and it was like recorded in between tours. But the raw promise of it is incredibly striking 42 years later of that.
Sure.
I guess like with where are you like sourcing, I guess, like your samples from mostly? Like just like anywhere you can find?
Nowadays, if I use samples, either something I'm listening to or just YouTube. Like I actually have gotten kind of like interested in at least like recently, the past couple of years, is like like as a lot of musicians do, like you watch reviews on certain pieces of equipment before, because you want to know what it sounds like. And so oftentimes like from that I'll just grab a sample from it if it's like something that seems really cool, but I don't really feel like I need to buy, or if it's like something that seems a little one note and it's like let's just take this sound I think is interesting, make it more interesting, and then
that's sick.
I don't need the effect. So I like doing that just just for fun. I mean, I still buy equipment, of course, but like sometimes it's like, oh, this is kind of cool. But then also objects, like just like household objects. So if I'm not grabbing samples from already pre-recorded material, like sometimes like we'll just set up in the studio the mic and a table of just things, and then just like leave the mic open and then just like hit stuff, make like tiny sounds, like really close mic'd objects, and then like chop it up later. But then too, I do also I do also like to sample from ASMR videos because it's just right there.
Yeah. That's sick, actually.
I think it's funny though, also because it does, especially on some of at least the last electric sound bath, it goes perfectly well with that. It fits in that vein of, yeah, you can play this with ASMR. You can play this underneath any of the cooking videos we've talked about earlier, and it channels that.
Sure, yeah. With electric sound bath in particular, like I don't think we ever really used samples all too much. Like that would, that we tried to keep more just like instrumental based. But I think I agree that like an ASMR remix of any of those tunes would probably be be something interesting.
One, keeping in the kind of focus here though, because while you didn't specifically use turntables on the Grey Ghost project releases, you did, at least for the Hasu Mountain release there, the Munjin Split with Natalie, the Tao Sounds release there, you did have a portable radio. There's a lot of radio feedback or radio sampling coming through, and it was all done as a live, no overdub piece. So how were you kind of prepping at that time for that? How did you build yourself up to get there?
Oh, for that, yeah. So, at that time, that would, I would say that was probably recorded, I guess, at the pinnacle of a particular iteration of my live performance bass specific setup. So I kind of knew everything that I had. I knew what it could do, how to kind of like juggle back and forth if I needed to. And I did utilize radio a lot. Like radio offers a lot of really interesting textures, a lot of really interesting sounds. And so I would definitely, I'm particularly talk radio. I really like to sample like voice and like do weird stuff. But the preparation for that, I guess, was just playing, practice. I think that I'm trying to remember. I had recorded that for a performance I did out here, because I think that split came out like right after I moved to Los Angeles.
Oh, sorry.
So I either recorded it for like one of my first shows I did out here, and that's an edit from it, or like right afterwards, I just kind of like took my setup back to the studio and then just recorded a quick setup, or a quick another iteration after the fact. But I mean, that was all one take. That was kind of that was like a fully realized thought, I guess, because I think especially for like improvised musicians, in some circles or in some cases, it will be more like a, I guess, variation on a theme, if that makes sense. Like, maybe the content of what I'm doing changes, and how I'm affecting the sound changes, but at least for me, like maybe a structure stays the same, or I kind of know that I want to start one way, get to a certain point, and then be like, okay, once I've done this particular thing, whatever it is, that's when I'm going to put in the radio and do a hard cut to switch, just kind of start thinking about ways to kind of like build a piece or build a performance. So I guess in some ways it makes it less improvisational, but like the mode of composition feels very free in a sense.
There's still, there's like a chance aspect to it because you don't quite know how it's going to get to it, but you also kind of know in your mind mentally, there are stages to this, there are block points, and then there will be a detente.
Exactly. And I think especially if you are an improvisational musician working with a looper in any sort of meaningful way, um, you add a really interesting creative limitation, because you always have to, in a way, shape what you're doing to fit the looper, because it's really easy for something to just become a loop, and you can't really just think of it as a loop. Like, it has to be compositionally relevant. And so to do that, it just takes like a lot of practice, I've found, to like really understand how to build something that on one hand you can recognize as a loop, but on the other hand, it is constantly evolving in an interesting way that won't, that won't just like get stale.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a couple more pieces kind of post beyond this. One thing, again, because this is one of those few releases under the Grey Ghost moniker, and you've put out stuff on Oral Canon under your own name. You've also had other just releases with other acts kind of as duos or stuff. But what did really define that shift towards just using your own personal name there? And with being able to shop your music, does that end up actually making any difference in the past decade? How has getting your music to labels like Hasu Mountain or Oral Canon or Moon Glyph really come about there?
Oh, I mean, for Hasu Mountain, I just like met them through Natalie, because
sick.
Because like
she's part of Goodwill Smith there.
Yeah, she's part of Goodwill Smith. So kind of when they were first, because the split I did with Natalie was like quite some time ago. So I think Hasu Mountain was still like getting up and going. So it wasn't, aside from knowing them through Natalie, like I think it wasn't that hard to get music to them. I think it's still pretty easy, like especially if it's good music. But in terms of like the name shift, that just felt. I mean, there's a couple reasons for that. I mean, part of it is like I didn't really connect. Yeah, I didn't really like connect with it anymore. It was kind of it just felt like it had been
like you used it to its capacity for that project.
Yeah, like I had used it and I wanted something, I wanted something that was either more meaningful, which I couldn't think of. So then I just used my name because it seemed kind of just like slightly easier. And then I guess like both like shopping around stuff or like trying to build like a personal name for yourself as a musician or a composer or whomever in the field of music. It seems might as well remove that extra step of someone finding out who the person is behind the moniker.
Yeah.
Just your own name. So I don't feel like there was too much of a stylistic shift necessarily. It was just more of like it just didn't like resonate with me anymore. So I just decided to shed it.
And again, when you were kind of deciding to shed the name, based on some of the timing that's been mentioned here, other stuff that's come up, I'm assuming this again was happening after you had moved from Chicago and you were moving, I'm assuming, here to LA.
Yeah, it did happen because I think that I did a couple like personal releases under that name. I did the Hasu Mountain one. I did a couple for Constellation Tatsu, and I think those were those were it. And it didn't, I guess it did coincide in a way with me moving here. It was more kind of like, I guess, moving from one stage of living in Los Angeles to another stage.
Mm-hmm. With a move across the country as well, does any kind of hobby or routine stuff change? I've just always been interested to kind of see how people navigate a move like that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, one of the biggest things that I will still, sometimes lament and grieve the loss of is daily bicycle riding for both commuting and for pleasure.
Yep. I get that.
So that's probably the biggest loss, aside from like reliable public transit that happened in the move from Chicago to here.
Although on the upswing, you did kind of start around this time working with Angela A. Wilson as part of the Electric Sound Bath. I remember back in 2020, I would have got this from Oral Canyon when I was talking to both of the people responsible for the label. And then in early 2021, when we talked to Brin, he mentioned Electric Sound Bath as well. And I know, again, because you've done work with Brin, some of the audio visuals or visual stuff for this, and then some collaborative tracks from his 2021 release, Home Screen Glow, if I recall. But what really brought kind of that duo, the collaboration with Electric Sound Bath? And were there kind of any limitations or kind of baselines, like this is what the vision is, this is where we could expand, this is not what we're doing?
The main goal or vision behind that was kind of to have, in one sense, like a different way to experience drone music in particular. Because like a sound bath is, you could argue like one branch of like drone music. It just happens to be in like a different type of spiritual or metaphysical circle. So yeah, I think the early idea for that was to have it be intentionally like long form, intentionally slow, and kind of mimic the effects of like a singing bowl or gong based sound bath, but with electric instruments. So like very like, very just like very, very drone and loop based, and with the intention of like not really changing too much, and for an audience that would be experiencing a longer just like a longer performance in a sense, because like the idea was to do it for people like in a yoga class, for people who wanted like an alternative to a sound bath, for people who were more interested in like a spiritual setting as opposed to like a venue.
Have you performed it in any, like, I guess, settings that it was intended to be listened to in?
Yeah, I would say most of the time it was actually performed in those types of settings.
Oh, that's sick.
Like early on, we collaborated with another artist named Jesse Fleming. He did a kind of like weekly meditation set. And so every so often we would provide sound for that.
Oh, that's sick.
And then we also collaborated with a breathwork instructor named Michael Cass, and provided sound for his practice, along with a few other kind of like one-off events as well. Like there was another kind of monthly or maybe like a bi-monthly event that combined acupuncture and Reiki.
Oh, wild.
That we would also provide sound
so cool.
for. Yeah, so there was a period of time where like that was kind of the main performance mode for that.
So go ahead, Maddie.
You go on, Thomas.
I was gonna say, are you guys still like playing shows or anything? Like, what's up with Electric Sound Bath? You guys still doing stuff?
We played a floating last year.
All right.
but it's been kind of we played like one like mid-pandemic show, or a couple mid-pandemic shows, just as a lot of performers have, but kind of like for both of us, in both our like creative and personal practices, they've they shifted. So we haven't done as much with electric sound bath lately, but yeah, so nothing too much lately.
Hey, it happens, but it does not shift the fact that, especially, I mean, the split tape is great, but the one that you guys did for Moon Glyph, I got to visit properly today and was really blown away with. To me, it's like one of those kind of key post Omni Garden Moon Glyph releases of why the label's really been strong for the past few years. And it just is you guys like right there in focus, playing some of your longest material and going full hog.
That one was so good.
Oh,
yeah.
Thank you.
It's also, it is very shocking. And we'll say is I was quickly on Discogs going through prep and getting the file ready. And I'm like, why are these electric sound bath tapes going for $36 now? It's wild.
Crazy.
People
really, I did not realize that.
I don't know who sent the prices in what part of the world they're doing, but I'm just going to say, I think people like this. I actually really think there's something deeply resonant, especially on that last one, of this world that's there. So,
that's very good to hear. Thank you.
And I don't know, it, again, listening to it, it also explained a bit, and then also going between the Grego stuff today, going back to, because we had you live in studio just a few weeks ago here. And again, that the performance that the Underwater Garden Ensemble did was lovely. That was some of the strongest stuff I've gotten to hear on a pair of speakers, or not even headphones, there at KCSB, just live in the studio. And it really also felt like an extension of some of that electric sound bath stuff, but more or less also the work that you've done with Squash and Biscuit between yourself and Shu Wen over there. And could you talk a little bit about the Squash and Biscuit duo, and how that's going right now?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So that kind of came about, via the pandemic, and then also like going back to school. Like that's kind of where we met. We both have met in a graduate program, and for myself, like starting to collaborate with Shuan, it felt like a good way to kind of remove any type of bonds that I might have put on my creative limitations before. Because like at that, like 2019, at that point, like right before starting school, like I had gotten to a point with my music where I felt like I had somewhat intentionally and unintentionally like put like guardrails or limitations as to like how I wanted it to be heard, how I wanted it to present itself. And so, I found it like hard to kind of break out of that. And so, going back to school, and then I guess in a way echoing and like kind of refocusing on what I want to achieve with music and my life, like that kind of helped shake my own set of internal labels I might have had. And so, during the pandemic is kind of when we met, when we started like playing, and I used that as an opportunity to just like not try to have too many expectations, or not to have too many ideas of what is this going to be. Let's just go and see what happens. And so that's kind of where it has led, where it has grown, and where it is, where it is today. It's kind of still in that process of expanding.
from the one release, their Lavender Eggplant, the real thread that kind of unites the pieces, and it's brought up there in the liner notes, there's the concision. It was just short investigation into different stuff. And there's a little bit, you see more of the vocal sampling that I think you mentioned earlier there, especially because that moves into some like bassy kind of territory with the voice. Very ambient, kind of wild stuff. But it's also very breezy listen.
Oh, thanks. One of the one of the things that I think both of us were also interested in is using the voice and also using language. And then also what you, as you mentioned, like keeping stuff like succinct and like on the shorter side. Like that was kind of like an intention, like let's, treat it more as like little amuse-bouche, if you will, to bring it back to food. But yeah, they did serve as like little investigations, and a lot of the material was recorded kind of like during the early time of playing together, learning how each other kind of like work musically, and then just taking chunks of that and seeing how it sounded edited together.
So does Shuen have a background in music as well?
Yeah, she also does. Actually very, very similarly to mine in a way, like she also had kind of during her undergrad kind of like a tumultuous relationship with music. Yeah. But then kind of became reinvigorated, and then went back to grad school to like really focus back on music.
Sick. So did you guys both go to grad school for music then?
We did. Yeah. We went to Cal Arts.
Oh, sick, dude. We have a bunch of friends that all have gone to Cal Arts that we've just met through the scene and stuff. It's,
it was, our experience was through the pandemic. So it was all over Zoom.
Oh, wow.
But,
I see.
In a lot of ways it was okay because, musicians, especially like graduate level musicians, most of us are older and we already have a studio. So it was kind of like, in some ways, like easier. Like we weren't really doing anything performance based necessarily. Like a lot of it was focusing on composition or more studio experimentation. So yeah, in a way it was nice to have professors just like in your lab with you to see what you're cooking with. It was still weird, but I definitely am thankful to have something to have kept me focused during that time.
Yeah, for sure.
Did you mentioned again you were at Cal Arts? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And did you get to work with Maddie Barbier at any point?
I did not, unfortunately.
The only reason I bring that up is we are talking to them very shortly.
Oh.
Probably
awesome.
Next week, because they also have a terrific release on Dinzu Artifacts. And I asked Joe over there, I'm like, what's their email? And realized they had a Cal Arts email. And I'm like, oh, that is another person in the Cal Arts orbit that we've gotten to talk with. So as well.
I'm familiar with that Dinzu Artifacts release, and everything that they put out is really great.
Yeah, for sure. Super good.
That's probably one of the top 5 tapes for me this year. I really just didn't anticipate someone was going to come and do like really exceptional deep listening that also is tied to a very unique spot and made a really strong case for why that spot should be preserved. So,
yeah.
But that was my tangent. Anything else, Thomas? There's a handful of Lucy's here.
Yeah.
That I've got. Kind of just quick ones, just random left field stuff. But firstly, we just talked about the Maddie. So there's kind of at least one release that I can kind of guess that, thrills you the most, but are there any other releases right now or just kind of music, new or old, that thrills you?
Oh, yeah, hold on, let me pull up the old, because I personally am in like the habit of just like listening to NTS in particular, and then just copying and pasting stuff, and then just usually just like throwing the album in Bandcamp. So I never have stuff off the top of my head, but one thing that I thought was really good that came out is what label was this on? Lapse. This label Lapse from Brittany in France put out a Ned Milligan release that
sick.
is delightful, really good, called Considerable.
The label's called
that was
Lapse,
kind of,
you said?
That, pardon?
What was the label called again?
Oh, it was called Lapse, Laaps.
Sick.
So I grabbed that. I thought that was really fantastic. The self-titled release from Coconut Dealers, I really love.
Oh, that's a good name.
I've never heard of that before. That sounds sick.
It's a really fantastic album.
That's awesome.
There's this really interesting release. So are y'all familiar with Mai Tai? I presume, maybe not.
I'm not.
No.
Mai Tai is great. He's an artist from Japan, but he did like a side project called Tenka. The release is called Hydration, which is really quite interesting. It's on Metron Records from the UK.
Oh, sick.
And I believe that this also has like a companion fragrance.
That's
so it's like
sick.
a side note. Like I've really like dipped into like the world of fragrances, and I think it's just like a really underexplored artistic medium, especially when it comes to like collaborations with like music and whatnot. It's really, it's really cool.
A bit of a tangent on this, because this really does get very rarely brought up. And the only other person I've seen with any dedicated, let me go to bat for cologne or perfumes and try to link this to music, is Mr. Tonglow, Joshua Mansook Kim. And I'm wondering, have you talked with Joshua there any capacity about perfumes and stuff? Because I know he's looking for people. I know he's like, I don't know if he's still trying to do a big piece to talk with musicians and people that are kind of in that, running that parallel or in that same intersection, but get in touch with him for that. Definitely.
I will definitely do that. Cause yeah, like I've talked with, not too many people about this. Cause, I feel like, fragrance in general kind of has like a weird stereotype that isn't necessarily justified. I mean, I guess maybe sometimes, but isn't necessarily justified. And I think it can like turn people off, but it's really just like a fun, it's one of the most fun forms of artistic expression that you can, experiment with, I think.
You go on, Thomas. Yeah.
I was going to say, just like elaborate on like what you mean by like experimenting with like fragrance. So like, how are you experimenting with fragrance?
I mean, I don't experiment with fragrance personally, because it's a fairly complex, from my understanding, like chemical thing. But there's an obscene amount of small perfumeries and fragrance makers that are, doing stuff that's beyond like Aqua du Jour or like Tom Ford. It's there's a bunch of like small boutique houses that are really making difficult sense, but then also really unique sense. And so like you can, there is a place here called Scent Bar that kind of, it's just like a perfume place.
They're in LA, or?
It's in LA. Yeah. It's admittedly very overwhelming for sure. But to kind of like experience like the non-mainstream, like Sephora colognes or whatever, like,
Yeah.
and to kind of dip a little, like a layer or two below that is really eye-opening, nose-opening, I guess. But yeah, there's some really interesting fragrances from like stuff that straight up smells like the maintenance shop from a garage to
That's
stuff
wild.
that smells like a dusty old library to just something that smells like a vibrant meadow from your dreams. It's just like so green and lush. Like there's a wide array of scents that I think are really fascinating.
I think this is like, because it's interesting to me to kind of hear this, because I think of the way that you're talking about this. I just swap out the word, fragrance or perfume for cassette. And it's like, oh, it all totally snaps into focus of like, oh, look at this cassette that does this particular thing or has that kind of flavor of a certain zone that another one doesn't. And it also, to me, extends to like, there is no kind of like scratch and sniff of a CD release or something. And the closest I've ever gotten that with cassettes is dead stock releases of 90s titles, where when I open them, they always smell like a Crayola. I don't know how, but they always smell like a Crayola when I open up a dead stock 90s cassette. And I'm like, this rips. I love it.
Interesting. That's weird. I would guess maybe the ink, but I don't know.
But I just love, again, hearing that about this world of fragrance, because it's something, it all to me though parallels kind of the way when you're making stuff on this boutique level for a particular audience. It's very long tail, but it's very sincere work, and that doesn't detract.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I guess that, hearing, kind of like, especially like boutique fragrance explained in that way, it would make sense why I might be attracted to it. Because as as someone who deals in like more strange sounds, it's like, yeah, and you guys as well, like definitely take a trip and smell some weird stuff, but finding the scent less traveled, the sound less traveled, whatever, just like exploring, there's so little that can be explored. Like that originally what drew me to fragrance for sure. Is like, it's something I didn't even consider, and there's like a whole entire world to explore. And I mean, that the same thing could actually be said about how like I, got started in this type of music, because I had a pretty late start to this, realm of sound. And it's like, oh, this is deep and rich and really just interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting that you said that it was just something you never considered, because I would have never considered, I guess, fragrances and like scents and stuff as being a form of like experimentation. But like I've always just used Aqua de Jour or whatever, just the basic ass cologne, you know what I mean? But that's cool. I actually kind of want to try and check that out and check out that place that you mentioned. What was it called again?
Scent Bar or Lucky Scent. But Scent. It goes by either one. There's one kind of like by the Grove on 3rd or Beverly or something like that.
Sick.
And then there's
this is an Americana.
downtown.
Sorry, this is an Americana household. I can't.
I apologize.
Yeah, no, that's awesome though. I'm gonna have to check that out. That's super cool. You opened up our sense, I guess. I don't know. Anyways,
yeah, I mean, I recommend everyone have a trip. I mean, they they provide free samples too.
That's sick.
So it's
cool.
It's worth it. Yeah.
All right. A couple final kind of just go bats here. This one we didn't quite get into. Just always interested, because we'd asked a few other artists about this. There's any major gear that you've ever kind of stumbled upon thrifting, or you've just been able to acquire, way below market value? And is there anything that you kind of just ever wish you could have had? Maybe you got later, maybe you never did.
Yes, I would say that actually the two main synths I use now, I got way below market value in the sense that they were free. The first one being y'all saw for the Underwater Garden performance, and that's this little Yamaha MU90 Rompler that actually Colin Brin he gave to me because we were roommates beforehand, and
sick.
He had this, it's just like a little 90s MIDI or general MIDI Rompler synth that is actually really it's not like a classic synth sound by any means, but it has like a lot of really interesting sounds. And the other main synth I use is a virus, an Access virus, which I also got for free, which is a different story. But that is that's just like largely considered one of the best synths out there that has been made. I mean, mine's a little bit older. It's like the first iteration, but so yeah, those two I definitely got below market value because they were gifts.
Yeah.
But in terms of gear that I would want,
anything you just watched what's it called, tutorial for, or not a tutorial, but like a review for or something, and you're like, I want that. That's going on the wish list, the Sweetwater wish list.
Not real. I mean, I have to say, like the Chase Bliss Mood is actually a really interesting effect. But if I could have anything, it probably would be like a vintage Fender Bass 6.
Oh, sick!
Which
there's 6-string
only
basses
Squier currently makes, but Fender used to make like a bitchin' version of it that that I would really like to have because they're very weird.
Yeah, I see on Reddit a lot. I get like the Bass 6 like subreddit, and it's always people just like, it shows up on like my recommended or something, and it's like always just people posting their like Squier Bass 6s. I guess that's the only reason I know what that is, but yeah.
It's really cool. It's just such a it's really strange. Like I would that is something I've thought about for a while to grab, but I don't need any more basses at the moment.
Is that like part of their like paranormal series or whatever?
The Squires, they did have a paranormal version of this.
Okay.
The original, I mean, if I had my druthers, it would be like the original, which is I don't think they've made very many, and they go for like $10,000.
Oh right, yeah, for like an actual one, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but like I would definitely settle for a Squier one at some point when I get room.
Yeah.
I've got one just final. This one's a weird question, but it's mostly, I'm just curious about the process for naming tracks. There were a couple tracks that I sort of mentally docked. One was on Of This World and another on Lavender Eggplant. We Wax and Wane and Dewdrop Refraction. Both of which immediately, to my mind, invoked Cocteau Twins. They're just wondering, like, is this a reference? Is there a larger game or scheme to how ambient musicians name their pieces? I don't think we've ever asked people about how they name tracks.
Yeah, that's true. We never have.
No, it's not a reference to anything. I think a lot of times for a lot of Electric Sound Bath tracks, Ange will usually kind of take care of the naming situation, or it's like a collaborative thing. I think this, I can't remember the exact, impetus for We Wax and We Wane. For Dewdrop Refraction, that is, that it's just kind of what happened. It's just kind of the name that came up. As I recall, there's actually a full version of that track that's Dewdrop Reflection, and the shorter version it just kind of changed it to Dewdrop Refraction.
Yep.
But part of the like reflection refraction thing was in reference to like how we made the track, which you know, at that point we were playing a lot of mahjong, and so for this piece, like we just got a bunch of samples together, and then I have a monome grid, and so we arranged the samples in like a C pattern on the grid, and so I sat on one side, Shun sat on the other side, and then the way we performed it was actually based on mahjong, and so that dictated which quadrant of the pad we would hit, and so we would kind of go back and forth playing our hand, and then drew new tiles and then played it again. So it was kind of,
that is so cool.
Where the reflection refraction came from. So very loose.
I like it.
But it is based on like how it was actually performed.
That is so cool. Anyways, I guess does that kind of do it for all of our questions here, Maddie?
It does.
I guess where can people keep up with all things Brian Griffith?
You know, I pretty much only use Instagram in terms of social media. So I'm at Griffith Absurdatory. That is my Instagram handle.
Sick.
You can also visit my website, briangriffith.zone.
Hell yeah.
And through both of those, there's a bunch of links to all of my, you know, various projects, various releases. But anymore, I would say like Instagram is probably my main vessel for disseminating any information.
Tight. I was looking at your Instagram recently. Are all those animations stuff that you made? We were kind of talking about like the animations and stuff you make earlier in the interview.
Oh, no, actually, most recent. Well, one of the reasons like there's been kind of less, you know, solo creative output or like emphasis on like albums is because I've been doing a lot of sound design and scoring for animations. And so a lot of the animations on, you know, that on my Instagram will be, let me actually double check before I put egg all over my face. But a lot
like
of it is going
crazy.
to be,
I don't know if you see it, but
you know, animations that we did music for. Some of the more, if you see like textural stuff, that will be my own work. But like the non-textural, like more professional looking stuff is going to be, music that has been composed for.
Oh, sick.
So yeah, I guess yeah. The three most recent animations, yeah, those would be just like snippets of like video art that I have that I have done.
I really like the one that says in the caption, video mood 1 rippling glitch water. That one's sick.
Oh, thank you. Yes, it is. I mean, that's what it looks like. In terms of naming convention, it's very literal.
Yeah.
When it comes to me naming these videos.
It looks dope, dude. I could see that being like a cool like visual behind like you performing or something.
Oh, thank you. That is, in fact, what we have done both for my solo stuff, for Electric Sound Bath, for Squash and Biscuit, for Underwater Garden, and for a couple other people. Just because I have a bunch of videos, so I've done that before because I think I agree. Like I can't really think of another way that these videos would actually work. So so I use it as an excuse to show my stuff whenever I perform.
Well, if we get you or Underwater Garden Ensemble or something up here to play soon, there's this cool venue that we have like our ambient, experimental, or whatever shows, noise shows and stuff at, called Control Disco. It's like a rave spot in Ventura in like a warehouse, but they like to do the stuff there. They like to host the stuff that we like to do too, but they have this really cool projection system that projects on the wall behind where I don't know, people usually perform, and then they have all these shapes on the wall, and it like custom projects onto all the shapes as well. And it'd be so sick to have like they usually run all their like own projections or whatever, but like just recently, like when Ian McPhee performed there, he had like his own visuals that he always performs with projected on there. So it'd be sick to like have your projections on there too if you guys performed.
Oh, that would be very cool.
Super sick.
Yeah,
it looks so cool, dude.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely down whenever.
We'll have to figure it out soon. Anyways, so we have one more question here. It's kind of the biggest one of the show, Brian. Are you ready to take this one?
Maybe. Yes. Let's go.
Okay.
You got it, Thomas.
Okay, so a rat is going to jump into your mouth. Do you want this rat to jump into your mouth head first or butt first, and why?
Head first.
Why?
Because even though it might be either just as dirty or maybe even dirtier than the rear end of a rat, I still don't want the final result of a one-way digestive tract in any capacity being the first thing to enter my mouth.
Fair, dude. That was a really elegant way of putting it too.
Hey, it happens for some folks.
Yeah. I feel that. Really good answer, Brian. Thank you for answering that. Anyways, I think that's all we have for today. Thanks for tuning into TBD on KCSB FM 91.9 every Sunday, 4 to 6 p.m. Net Radio every Wednesday, 7 p.m. This has been Brian Griffith. Thanks so much, Brian.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brian.